So in the opinion polls, the border is now the number one issue in the US, in border states such as Arizona, Texas, but also up north in places like Montana, in places like New York. A lot of frustration about it. And people are basically turning around and saying this is an issue of fairness. I pay into the system. I work hard. I do what I was meant to do. Yet I seem to get looked over for people to be put up in hotels, for people to be, as they see it, given a free pass into the US. That really, really angers people. And a lot of that anger is focused at Joe Biden. People know that he loosened the rules in early in his administration through executive orders. People know that he stopped building the wall that Trump was building. And people really are frustrated by that, and they see that as weakness, and they see it as him trying to please Democrats on his own side rather than want to do what's right by the country. And a really important shift, Jacob, is that is among Hispanic people too. Hispanic second generation, third generation immigrants, even some first generation immigrants who've been here for years, they feel like they did things the right way. A Hispanic woman I was speaking to in Tucson, Arizona, a couple of weeks ago, she said to me, I didn't care about the border in 2016. I didn't care about it in 2020, but now I see the damage that an open border is doing. And she was actually saying she's going to vote Donald Trump rather than Joe Biden at the coming election.
And is this in part because of the criminality that's associated with it, and indeed the murders that there have been, or is it because of the consequences that you mentioned on fairness? And trying to get at, this is clearly a very broad issue. How deep is it in terms of polling?
I think it is deep. I think it's something that gets that real sense of unfairness that I was saying. I think there is a crime element too. I think especially in big cities, and this is where you saw actually House Republicans doing quite well in 2022, in places like New York, suburbs that felt affected by the border crisis. Of course, many migrants end up in these big cities in the north, either by their own choice or because some of these southern states who are frankly fed up with how things are going have bust them up there to try and give these northern states that seem happy to take migrants in a sort of taste of what it is indeed like to take that number of people. I think, therefore some people do see crime. We've seen, very publicly, very sort of prominent murders that have taken place. We obviously saw that come up in Joe Biden's State of the Union address after the murder of a young woman by an illegal migrant. And you also see concern about crime growing across the board in cities in America. That's not just because of migration, it's also because of what they see as softer crime policies in the wake of those Black Lives Matter protests back in 2020. But look, I think it's a huge issue. I think it's a broad issue, and I think it's a deep issue. And I think a lot of what happens in November is going to hinge on it. I think, whether people have that at the forefront of their minds in the election is going to be a huge thing. And if they do, it's going to be better for the Republicans rather than the Democrats.